series of lessons called Escaping the Matrix. A biblical, mathematical examination of biblical interpretation. Now, right off the bat, some would argue that the Bible interprets itself. That can't be true for a number of reasons, brothers and sisters. Number one, if the Bible interpreted itself, you would not have to read it. Number two, if the Bible interpreted itself, then every church would have the exact same interpretation of the Bible, since all of them read the Bible. We wouldn't have tens of thousands upon churches and denominations assuming that the Bible interpreted itself. The fact of the matter is, ladies and gentlemen, it takes the human mind at the control of the God that created us to give us insight into the principles contained in the Bible. We are, ladies and gentlemen, in a matrix, an evil matrix, one that is producing the crime, the desolation, the spiritual blindness, the poverty, and all those things that go along with being under a controlled system that is towards our destruction. I'm going to use as our laboratory during these series of lessons my hometown of Detroit, Michigan. Detroit is the best example of what happens, ladies and gentlemen, when the leaven of the scribes and the Pharisees has been eaten. Now, in case you don't understand what I just said, Jesus in the Bible warned his disciples about the leaven of the scribes and the Pharisees. What happened was that he had fed 5,000 with 2 fish and 5 loaves of bread. And after he fed the 5,000, he asked all of his disciples to gather up the leftovers. And when they had gathered up all the leftovers, he warned them. He gave them a warning against the scribes and the Pharisees. He said, beware of the leaven of the scribes and the Pharisees. So what did he mean by that? His disciples were confused. Was he angry at us? What happened? We picked up all the baskets. What does he mean? Beware of the leaven of the scribes and the Pharisees. The interpretation of that, brothers and sisters, is that the leaven represented their doctrine. And their doctrine, like Jesus' miracle of multiplying the loaves and the fish, will multiply. And when that doctrine multiplies, you will see the effect of that doctrine all over the place. So he warned the people about the leaven or the doctrine of the scribes and the Pharisees, because just as he used the principle of multiplication to multiply the fish and the loaves of bread, if their doctrine is used as bread, it will multiply, and you will see the devastation, you will see the desolation that you see in our hometown of Detroit, Michigan right now. Outside of the Vatican, Detroit and Chicago are neck and neck, having the most numbers of churches. So why is it, if they represent Jesus and his doctrine, why are not the blind given sight? Why are not the hungry fed? Why are the people in spiritual blindness? And why is it, ladies and gentlemen, that the preachers have become so rich while the people have become so poor? It is because of the doctrine of the scribes and the Pharisees. Now, again, when Jesus came in his day 2,000 years ago, he discovered a glitch in the system, a glitch in the matrix. And as Jesus exploited that glitch 2,000 years ago, we're going to exploit that glitch today. Now, this particular lesson is going to deal with Genesis chapter 1, because the first thing we have to understand is what is the matrix in the context that I'm discussing this. In the Bible, ladies and gentlemen, what this program is going to show you with solid proof that in the Bible there are two entities attempting to assert themselves as God, your creator. And whichever those entities is your creator, that is the one whose nature you have. So as we go along in this program, I want you to keep in mind certain principles that we're going to be using to help you understand the conflict that you see. There was a wise man once said that the Bible is good for our spiritual enlightenment, but some have poisoned it. And that poison has caused a snare among the people, and it is that snare that the preachers and the Pharisees of our day are using to snare us spiritually. Keep in mind certain scientific principles as we go along here. The first scientific principle that I want to briefly deal with or just touch on is the concept of the conservation of mass and the conservation of energy. And while this may seem like it has nothing to do with what we're about to discuss, biblical interpretation, it's fundamental to our thinking. The book says, "For that which can be known of God is clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made." So we can look at the world around us and the principles that are operating in the world around us, ladies and gentlemen, and draw conclusions about God himself. Because that which can be known of God is clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made. The conservation of mass, the conservation of energy, and the law of constant composition in chemistry shows us that whatever is in a thing is in a thing. Now remember, Jesus talked about the leaven of the scribes and the Pharisees. Think about that bread. Whatever you put in there is in there to that degree that you put it in. And it will have an effect on the outcome of that which you have placed it in. So whatever is in something to the proportion and to the degree that it's there, that you placed it in there. My city, Detroit, as I said earlier, is filled with churches. Now, whatever flourishes in an environment is natural to that environment and an integral part of that outcome of that environment. Let me say that again so you can really catch on to what I'm talking about. Whatever is in an environment, whatever flourishes in an environment is natural to that environment, and the outcome will be proportional to the amount of substance in that environment. My city, the city of Detroit, has over 10,000 churches registered. These are the ones who have buildings and who have licenses and who have their 501c3 status and all those things. They're registered on the books. Over 10,000 in the city of Detroit alone. So what effect does the doctrine of these churches have on the people? What effect does these churches' doctrine, where can we see the effect of their doctrine on the people's behavior? I submit to you, ladies and gentlemen, that since the churches and the preachers purport to be the spiritual leaders and the spiritual guides of the city, of the community, we can conclude that their effect should be at the spiritual level of the people. It should be seen at the spiritual level of the people. And I ask you a question. Is our city spiritually flourishing, or is it in spiritual blindness? Is our city, with churches on every corner, flourishing economically? Is it flourishing politically? Is it flourishing in any respect, with churches everywhere and preachers everywhere, and they being the biggest influence in politics, in education, in economics? What is the effect of their doctrine on our city?